Picture this. A gray wolf can smell a rabbit from over a mile away. A cheetah can hit 70 miles an hour before you've finished reading this sentence. An octopus can taste with its skin. A pigeon can navigate home from 500 miles away using nothing but the Earth's magnetic field, which is a skill most humans can't manage using an actual GPS. And yet, here we are. Not the fastest, not the strongest, not the ones with the sharpest claws or the thickest hide or the most terrifying set of teeth. Just a soft, slow, hairless primate that sunburns if it stands outside too long. And somehow, this is the species running the planet. So what happened? How did the animal kingdom's most fragile contestant end up owning the whole game board? The answer isn't one single thing. It's a chain reaction, a lucky sequence of biological accidents that snowballed into something no other species ever managed to pull off. And once you see the whole chain, you start to realize humans didn't win because we were built better. We won because we were built weird. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll never look at a squirrel the same way again. Let's start with the most obvious culprit, the brain. Everybody loves to point at the human brain like it's some kind of trophy. And sure, at about 3 pounds and packed with roughly 86 billion neurons, it's an impressive piece of biological hardware. But here's the twist nobody tells you. Brain size alone means almost nothing. Elephants have brains 3 times bigger than ours. Sperm whales are walking around, or rather swimming around, with brains that weigh close to 20 pounds. If raw brain size was the golden ticket, we'd all be bowing down to dolphins right now. What actually matters isn't the size of the brain. It's the wiring. Specifically, it's the size of something called the neocortex relative to the rest of the brain, and how densely packed our neurons are compared to other animals of similar brain size. Human brains punch dramatically above their weight class in terms of raw processing density. We fit more thinking power into a smaller space than almost anything else on Earth. Think of it like comparing an old desktop computer the size of a refrigerator to a modern laptop. The refrigerator might have more physical stuff crammed inside it, but the laptop is doing more actual work, faster, using a fraction of the material. But even that isn't the real secret weapon, because a powerful brain sitting alone in one skull in one animal, living one lifetime, isn't actually all that special. Chimpanzees are shockingly intelligent. Crows can solve multi-step puzzles that would stump a lot of adult humans on a bad Monday. Octopuses can open jars, escape tanks, and apparently hold grudges against specific lab workers they don't like. Intelligence, on its own, has shown up over and over again throughout evolutionary history. Nature has run that experiment many times. So intelligence by itself cannot be the full explanation, because if it were, we'd be sharing this planet with a few other species running their own civilizations by now. So here's where things get interesting. The real superpower isn't what's happening inside one human brain. It's what happens between human brains. Humans are, without much competition, the most cooperative large mammal on the planet. Not the most aggressive, not the most territorial, the most cooperative. And I don't mean cooperative in some warm, fuzzy documentary narrator kind of way. I mean cooperative in a cold, brutally effective evolutionary sense. Humans are the only species that regularly works together in large groups of genetically unrelated individuals toward a shared goal, and does it voluntarily without constant supervision. Compare that to, say, a wolf pack. Wolves cooperate, sure, but almost exclusively within family units, and the group size caps out fairly small because coordinating a hunt among a dozen wolves without language gets messy fast. Ants and bees cooperate in massive numbers, but their cooperation is essentially hardwired, almost mechanical, driven by rigid genetic programming and colony-level instinct rather than flexible decision-making. A worker bee isn't weighing options, it's running a script. Humans, on the other hand, can walk into a room full of total strangers from different countries, speaking different first languages, and within an hour organize themselves into a functioning team to build something, solve something, or survive something. Try getting that kind of spontaneous cooperation out of literally any other species, and you'll be waiting a long time. And this is where language slides onto the stage, and honestly, language might be the single most underrated superpower in the history of biology. People treat language like it's just a nice little tool for chatting about the weather, but that seriously undersells what it actually does. Language lets one human transfer the entire contents of an idea directly into another human's brain, without either of them having to personally discover that idea from scratch. Think about how insane that actually is. If a chimpanzee figures out a clever way to crack open a nut using a rock, that knowledge mostly stays with that one chimpanzee, maybe gets passed to its immediate offspring through observation if it's lucky. But if a human figures out a clever way to do something, they can explain it in a sentence. And suddenly thousands or millions, or in the age of the internet, billions of other humans can instantly access that same discovery. Nobody else on this planet has that. No other species has a system where an idea discovered by one individual can spread near instantly to the entire population. This is the part where I have to bring up a term you've probably heard thrown around: cumulative culture. It sounds academic, but the concept is actually beautifully simple. It means knowledge builds on top of previous knowledge, generation after generation, like a ladder, instead of each generation starting from zero. No animal, other than humans, appears to do this in any significant way. A beaver today builds essentially the same dam a beaver built 10,000 years ago. Impressive engineering? Sure, but frozen in time. A human 10,000 years ago was chipping stone tools. A human today is designing spacecraft that can land themselves back on a floating platform in the middle of the ocean. Same species, same basic brain hardware, completely different results because each generation didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Literally. Someone invented the wheel once and then everyone after that just got to use it. This is the compounding interest of knowledge, and once that snowball started rolling for humans, it never stopped. And it just kept getting bigger. Now let's talk hands, because hands are doing a lot more heavy lifting in this story than most people realize. Somewhere along the evolutionary road, our ancestors' hands got freed up from walking duty. Once early humans became reliably bipedal, walking upright on two legs, the hands were suddenly available for other jobs. And what an upgrade those hands turned out to be. Humans have what's called a fully opposable thumb combined with fine motor control that lets us do precision tasks other animals simply cannot replicate. Threading a needle, carving a spear point, typing out a very sarcastic text message. All of it traces back to this one anatomical shift. Chimpanzees have opposable thumbs too, technically, but theirs are shorter and less dexterous, built more for climbing and gripping branches than for fine manipulation. Human hands evolved in the opposite direction, trading away some climbing strength for precision grip and control. And once you combine dexterous hands with a brain capable of abstract planning, you unlock something genuinely rare in nature: the ability to imagine an object that doesn't exist yet and then physically build it. An eagle doesn't sit around designing a new kind of nest. A beaver doesn't prototype dam version 2.0. But a human can look at a pile of raw materials and mentally construct something that has never existed before in the history of the universe, then use those hands to bring it into physical reality. That's not just tool use. Loads of animals use tools in a basic sense. Sea otters crack shells with rocks. Crows bend wire into hooks. Chimpanzees fashion sticks into termite fishing tools. But almost none of them significantly improve their tools over generations, and almost none of them combine multiple tools into increasingly complex systems the way humans do, going from sharpened rock to spear to bow to catapult to firearm to orbital rocket in an unbroken chain of upgrades. And speaking of upgrades, let's talk about the discovery that might have changed everything more than any other single moment in human history: fire. Learning to control fire wasn't just about staying warm on a cold night, though that mattered plenty too. The real game changer was cooking. Cooking food does something remarkable. It breaks down tough plant fibers and denatures proteins before they even enter your body, which means your digestive system doesn't have to work nearly as hard to extract calories and nutrients. Raw food takes enormous amounts of energy to digest. Cooked food is basically pre-processed fuel. This might sound like a minor convenience, but the effects were massive. Some researchers argue that cooked food essentially subsidized the growth of the human brain. Brains are incredibly expensive organs to run, burning through a shocking percentage of the body's total energy despite being a relatively small fraction of total body weight. By cutting down the energy cost of digestion, cooking may have freed up enough spare metabolic budget to fund the construction of a bigger, hungrier, more powerful brain. In a very real sense, humans may have cooked their way into becoming smarter. Fire also extended the day. Once you can control flame, night stops being just a dangerous void full of predators and becomes usable time. Time to talk, time to teach, time to tell stories around a fire, which, by the way, some anthropologists believe is where a huge chunk of human culture, myth, and social bonding actually originated. The campfire wasn't just for warmth, it might have been humanity's very first classroom, theater, and community center rolled into one glowing circle of light. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. Now let's zoom out and talk about something humans are almost embarrassingly bad at compared to other animals. Raw physical power. Seriously, in a one-on-one physical fight, a human being does not stand a chance against most large predators. A chimpanzee, despite being smaller than an adult human, is estimated to be several times stronger pound for pound thanks to differences in muscle fiber composition. A single swipe from a grizzly bear can end a confrontation instantly. Humans are slow, we're weak for our size, we don't have claws worth mentioning, our teeth are laughably unthreatening, and our skin tears about as easily as wet paper compared to a rhinoceros hide. So how does the weakest kid on the savannah end up as the apex predator of the entire planet? This is where one of the strangest and most underrated human superpowers comes into play. Endurance. Humans are, pound for pound, among the best long-distance runners in the entire animal kingdom. Not the fastest sprinters, not even close, but over long distances, especially in heat, humans can outlast almost every other large mammal on Earth. This ability is called persistence hunting, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Early humans could chase an animal like an antelope not by outrunning it in a sprint, which is impossible, but by relentlessly tracking and pursuing it for hours under the hot sun until the animal literally overheated and collapsed from exhaustion. The secret behind this endurance comes down to a few wild evolutionary quirks. Humans sweat through millions of glands spread across nearly hairless skin, which is an incredibly efficient cooling system compared to panting, which is what most four-legged predators rely on. A cheetah can smoke a human in a 100-meter sprint without even trying, but a cheetah also has to stop and cool down after a short burst, or it risks literally cooking itself from the inside. Humans, with our sweat-soaked, mostly furless bodies, can keep a steady jogging pace for hours in blistering heat while barely slowing down. We're basically biological hybrid engines built for the long haul, while most predators are drag racers built for a single explosive sprint. Add to that our upright posture, which reduces the surface area exposed directly to the sun, and our long, springy leg tendons that store and release energy with each stride like built-in shock absorbers. And you get an animal that isn't fast, isn't strong, but is nearly impossible to shake off once it locks onto a target. In a very real sense, early humans didn't outmuscle their prey. They outstubborned it. Now combine that stamina with another human specialty most animals can't match: throwing. Humans have shoulder and elbow joints uniquely structured to store and release elastic energy, allowing us to throw objects with a combination of speed and accuracy that's nearly unmatched in nature. A professional baseball pitcher can throw a ball over 100 miles an hour. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, throw things too, but slowly and with terrible aim, more like an annoyed toddler tossing a toy across a room than an actual weapon system. This throwing ability meant early humans could kill or injure prey, or defend against predators from a distance, without ever needing to get within reach of claws or fangs. Combine long-distance endurance with accurate long-range throwing, and suddenly this weak, slow, clawless animal becomes an incredibly dangerous hunter, capable of taking down creatures many times its size and strength, all without ever needing to win a close quarters fight. Let's pause here and take stock because there's a common thread running through everything so far. Big brain, cooperative behavior, powerful language, cumulative culture, dexterous hands, controlled fire, endurance running, accurate throwing. None of these individually would have been enough. A chimp has decent hands and some tool use, but no fire and limited language. A wolf has cooperation, but only within small family packs and with no cumulative culture. An elephant has a massive brain and impressive memory, but no hands capable of fine manipulation. Every other species on Earth got one or two pieces of this puzzle. Humans somehow ended up collecting nearly the entire set, and once you have most of the pieces, they start reinforcing each other in a feedback loop. Better cooperation means better group hunting. Better group hunting means more reliable food, including calorie-dense meat and cooked food. More reliable calories mean the body can afford to fund an expensive, energy-hungry brain. A bigger, better brain enables more complex language. More complex language enables faster transmission of ideas. Faster idea transmission accelerates tool development. Better tools improve hunting and food security even further, which frees up even more time and energy for socializing, teaching, and inventing. It's less like one advantage and more like a chain of dominoes, where each one knocks over the next, and the whole thing snowballs into something no other species ever managed to trigger. There's also a psychological ingredient in all this that doesn't get nearly enough credit. Curiosity paired with a tolerance for delayed gratification. Humans are weirdly willing to invest huge amounts of time and effort into things that won't pay off immediately. Planting a crop and waiting months for a harvest. Spending years training an apprentice. Building a tool that won't be finished for weeks. Most animals operate almost entirely in the immediate present, driven by hunger, threat, and opportunity happening right now. Humans developed the mental machinery to plan for a future that doesn't exist yet, and to sacrifice comfort today for a payoff much later. Agriculture, architecture, medicine, education, all of it depends on this strange human willingness to delay reward, sometimes across an entire lifetime, or even across generations that will never personally see the finished result. Let's take a quick detour because it's worth addressing a question that probably popped into your head at some point during all this. What about animals that are clearly smart, cooperative, or skilled in their own right? Dolphins have complex social structures, distinct signature whistles that function almost like names, and impressive problem-solving skills. Crows and ravens use tools, plan ahead, and can even hold what looks a lot like grudges against specific people who've wronged them. Elephants mourn their dead, remember individuals for decades, and cooperate in complex family groups led by an experienced matriarch. Octopuses solve puzzles, escape enclosures, and display a kind of alien intelligence that evolved on a completely separate branch of the tree of life from anything with a backbone. These animals are genuinely remarkable, and it would be a disservice to pretend otherwise. But here's the thing that separates all of them from humans, even the smartest of the bunch. None of them have managed to combine flexible, large-scale cooperation, cumulative culture passed down through generations, complex symbolic language, and dexterous tool-making hands into one single package. Dolphins are smart, but they don't have hands, and they live underwater, which makes fire, metallurgy, and permanent construction essentially impossible. Octopuses are clever, but most species only live a couple of years and barely overlap with their own offspring, so there's no real opportunity for knowledge to be passed down and accumulated across generations. Elephants have excellent memory and social bonds, but their trunks, while impressively dexterous, can't match the fine motor precision of a human hand for building complex tools. Each of these species evolved a genuinely brilliant solution to survival. Humans just happened to evolve a combination platter, and that combination turned out to be the golden ticket. Now, here's a twist worth sitting with for a second. A lot of this human dominance didn't come from being individually better than other animals. It came from essentially cheating the rules of individual biology by outsourcing our limitations to the group and to accumulated knowledge. A single human alone in the wilderness with no tools, no language partners, no inherited knowledge is honestly pretty pathetic compared to most wild animals in their natural environment. Slow, weak, thin-skinned, bad senses of smell, no claws worth mentioning. Drop one modern human into a forest with absolutely nothing, and their odds of long-term survival against nature are genuinely not great. But that's precisely the trick. Humans were never designed by evolution to survive as isolated individuals relying purely on built-in biological weaponry. We were shaped to survive as networked groups, sharing accumulated information, dividing labor, and building on each other's discoveries across generations. The real unit of human power was never a single body. It's the network, a tribe, a village, a civilization, an entire connected species passing knowledge down an unbroken chain stretching back tens of thousands of years. When you fight a human, you're not really fighting one weak, clawless primate. You're fighting the collected knowledge of everyone who ever taught that human something, plus every tool that knowledge allowed them to build. This is honestly why humans managed to spread into nearly every environment on the planet, something almost no other large mammal has done. Polar bears are magnificent, but you won't find one thriving in the Sahara. Camels are perfectly adapted desert survivors, but drop one in the Arctic and it's in serious trouble. Humans, on the other hand, live in freezing tundra, scorching desert, dense rainforest, high mountain altitudes where the air itself is dangerously thin, and even, thanks to some seriously impressive engineering, in orbit above the entire planet. No fur adaptation required, no built-in desert water storage needed, just clothing, shelter, tools, and inherited knowledge, endlessly reapplied to whatever environment we happen to wander into. There's an interesting evolutionary irony buried in all of this too. In a lot of ways, humans succeeded specifically because we stayed unfinished, biologically speaking. Compare a human baby to almost any other mammal baby. A baby zebra is up and running within literal minutes of being born because it has to be, or it becomes lunch. A human baby, on the other hand, is basically useless for years. Can't walk for about a year, can't fully care for itself for well over a decade. This extended period of helplessness sounds like a massive weakness, and biologically, in a vacuum, it kind of is. But this prolonged developmental window is also exactly what allows an enormous amount of learning to happen. Human brains keep developing and rewiring themselves for years after birth, staying flexible and moldable in a way that lets each individual absorb an incredible amount of cultural knowledge, language, and skill from the people around them. That extended childhood, that long stretch of vulnerability, is essentially the price humans pay for having brains flexible enough to download an entire civilization's worth of accumulated knowledge before adulthood even starts. Other animals are born nearly finished products, running mostly on instinct. Humans are born as unfinished, half-built projects, deliberately left open for years so culture and learning can finish the construction. So, when you zoom all the way out, the reason humans ended up on top wasn't a single killer feature. It was never about having the sharpest claws or the fastest legs or even, honestly, the single biggest brain. It was about stacking together a rare combination of traits, each one only moderately useful in isolation, that happened to amplify each other when combined. Cooperation amplified by language. Language amplified by cumulative culture. Culture amplified by dexterous hands capable of building tools. Tools amplified by an extended childhood built for learning. Learning amplified by an energy-efficient, cooked food-fueled brain. Every piece feeding into the next, compounding generation after generation, for tens of thousands of years, until this soft, slow, practically weaponless primate somehow ended up reshaping the entire surface of the planet, launching machines beyond the atmosphere, and mapping the inner workings of atoms too small to even see. Every other species on Earth is optimized for its specific environment, running the same successful strategy on repeat for millions of years, generation after generation, largely unchanged. Humans took a completely different path. Instead of optimizing our bodies for one environment, we optimized our minds and our social structures for adapting to any environment, and then just kept upgrading the plan indefinitely. The wolf is still hunting the exact same way its ancestors hunted 10,000 years ago. The human is not, and that difference, small as it might seem on paper, turned out to be the entire ballgame. So the next time you're feeling a little unimpressive next to nature's greatest hits, next to a cheetah's speed, or an eagle's eyesight, or a bear's raw power, remember this. You're not carrying around the fastest body or the strongest muscles on this planet, and you never will be. But you are carrying around a piece of the single most effective survival strategy biology has ever produced, not because of what your body alone can do, but because of everything your species figured out together, one shared idea at a time, stretching back further than anyone can fully imagine. That's the real reason humans beat every other animal. Not one advantage, a whole conspiracy of them working together.